Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about LMS migration and how to break down the complexities of that process into very actionable steps. The session today is going to be roughly 1 hour long, and I'm joined by our three lovely guest speakers who I'm going to introduce you to in a second. We are thrilled to have you with us, Stefan Mach from Mazda Motor Europe, Fiona Latney from Fosway Group, and Andreas Pohl from IMC. Each of them brings a unique perspective, real-world experience, and actionable insights that will help us better understand how to approach LMS migration. Thank you all for joining us today and for sharing your expertise with us. As we all know, the environments we're working in are changing faster than ever. New technologies are transforming how we operate. Employees expect more personalized and engaging learning experiences, and there's constant pressure to stay competitive and drive revenue growth. For L&D teams, this means more than just keeping up. It means leading the way. The right learning system isn't just a tool for training, it's a business-critical system that can directly impact productivity, employee retention, and ultimately the bottom line. Updating or migrating your LMS is about making sure it works for your organization. But, of course, it's not always straightforward. There are questions like, will it scale as you grow? Is it easy to manage? Can it work with your other systems? And is it intuitive enough for everyone to use? So we get it. Migrating and replacing an LMS is more than a technological upgrade. It's about being able to deliver relevant and effective training programs that move the needle. But many organizations face fragmented systems that can make it challenging. Many organizations face fragmented systems that can make it challenging to keep pace with their specific needs and KPIs. We've conducted research into the current state of learning technologies and found that there is a clear need for considering LMS migration. Nearly half of the surveyed organizations, 51%, are juggling multiple learning platforms and fragmented systems instead of a consolidated single system. Now, there are some reasons for a multi-platform setup. It can mean access to a broader range of resources, which can feel like a win for meeting diverse learner expectations. But the flip side is often far greater. Managing multiple platforms can lead to uneven learning experiences, reporting challenges, and high costs and resource investments, which, besides the huge administrative burden, widens the risk that especially large organizations face, disjointed and siloed trainings. Building on the previous point, one of the biggest challenges with a fragmented system is integration, or more often the lack of it. Right now, only 55% of surveyed organizations have fully integrated their systems with their learning technologies. And for those managing multiple learning platforms, the challenges multiply. Today's session is all about delivering you the insights you need to give you a clear starting point and practical advice for upgrading and replacing your LMS. So without further ado then, after having introduced the topic, I would love to introduce Fiona to you. Fiona, please take us away.
Thank you, Annika. It's lovely to actually be on this call, and I'll explain a bit more about that in a minute. But so why should I be invited to this? And actually, that very first poll question: have you ever been involved in a migration? Before I worked at Fosway, yes, I have been involved in a migration of one LMS to another. So just a bit of background about myself. So I have been involved in the learning tech industry for almost 25 years. And in that time, I've always been involved with learning systems. So I've either sold, managed, or implemented them. And then 8 years ago, I joined Fosway. And so now I'm the lead analyst on learning systems. And so lead the research for learning systems specifically. And I think, as I say, being part of this particular webinar is an absolute privilege for me. And the next slide will actually, because it encapsulates really what is said on the next slide. So about, oh, that's the one. So basically, most of you, if you've heard of Fosway, will know about our 9 grid. And so that's the benchmark tool and the output from the research that we do. And I've just started doing the research for next year's 9 grid, which will be published at the end of February. But what you might not know, if you know us from the 9 grid, is the other things that we get involved in. And one, obviously, is with the vendors, and they give us a huge amount of data from what they do and the functionality that they have. You only get to see publicly the tip of the iceberg in terms of that data. So what tends to happen is that corporates will come to us, like of Mazda, who just want to know, okay, we are wanting to do this, and therefore, what should the shortlist be? Now, we never choose for any corporate that we work with, but we can provide a long list of vendors and then shorten it and explaining why we shortened it. And then either get involved in the process, or like Mazda, we just let them go and do what they needed to do from a procurement process. So this webinar brings to life really the whole of what Fosway does in terms of vendor and corporate, as well as the research as well. So why do you need potentially help from somebody that knows that background? If we go on to the next slide, this is a question that we ask in all our every year in our digital learning reality survey. Do you think your current learning platforms are fit for the modern workforce? And forever since that we've been doing this, we get a 50-50 answer of yes or no. In fact, this last year, it's gone up to 56% of no, that they don't think it's fit for the modern workforce. But the other thing for this is, if somebody is using the learning module of their HCM system, that figure, that no, goes up to 62%. We'll maybe come back to that in a little while. So it's important that when you make this big decision, which could even be career defining in terms of, if you're going to be successful at this, then don't go it alone. Let me show you the next slide, which is the 9 grid. And there are 49 vendors on that list, on that grid, that we benchmark. There are a lot more waiting in the wings that want to be on the grid. And actually, our focus is only ever on Europe or on EMEA. We don't look at the full global US. So there could be some big systems that work a lot in the US, but they don't make it onto the grid because they don't have any customers that are headquartered in Europe. So, I mean, that's one thing that's important. The other thing is that we are talking about enterprise size organizations that will be looking at this. So in essence, that bottom line, the horizontal bottom line, could be at really 1,000 employees and going up to above 10,000 above the top line. But just bear in mind, everything's in threes and it's not an analog scale. We're just going low, mid, high on the way up the scale there. I also wanted to point out here, and every single zone has value. It's not like some analysts' quadrants that maybe steer you towards that top right box. No, every zone has value, and it depends on your user requirements, where you should look. That's not obvious in a 2D model, all right? But as I say, we've got the data in the background that can help. The other thing I just want to point out about this, because I'll come back to it in a minute, but you can see some are squares and some are circles on the grid. The circles are the suites, those that can provide an end-to-end solution for you. The squares are the specialists, and it's mainly a point solution. And in the report at the back of the grid that you can get from our website, the specialists are named in terms of what they specialize in. But the suites, we don't give any other help than say the size of the organizations or their presence in the market, and also their total cost of ownership. But what we will say that midsection is very busy, and there are really, that's a kind of a mid-enterprise market that will be looking there. And they don't want to be buying more than one system. And again, we'll come back to that in a minute. So moving on to the next slide then, we asked the question as well. This is another digital learning reality survey result that was published just about a month ago. And it's, what's the ecosystem that your learning system fits into? And it's a little bit like the question that, or the survey that IMC had. We've got a little bit more on the result there. So there were some of you there that were saying, quite a lot of you, I think, big proportion of you were saying that you had a single best of breed platform. So if you're thinking of moving from that, it could be one of a couple of reasons, perhaps. And one is that maybe you answered no in the, is it fit for purpose for the future? Or it could be, as Mazda, as Stefan's going to explain, it could be that it was a bespoke system and you decided you needed to move on to add more functionality. So 42% we've got there as single best of breed. There's also those where you've got many best of breed systems. And again, on the results there of the poll showed that there were those of you that had that multiple best of breed. And it may be that you're wanting to consolidate those best of breed. It's going to be so important in the future that if you don't consolidate, that the integration of all those systems happen if we are going to achieve the right sort of results when we start to look at skills. And all that data has got to go back to whatever the system of record is for skills. And they need to, are they coming from all sorts of different systems? And are you calling everything the same thing in each of those systems? It can get very confusing if you haven't got all that in place. So maybe there's a decision, okay, we need to consolidate, and therefore we're going to have to migrate onto one system. The next two I'm going to take just together and talk about the fact that you could be part of a learning module. You're using a learning module as part of either an HCM or a talent suite. And again, we will talk about that a little bit in a minute. So moving on to the next slide. So looks a bit busy on this one, but the main question is about LXPs. Now, LXPs isn't really a category that Fosway we tend to use, except when we're asking the question in a survey like this, because it is obviously a marketing term that's out there. And it's, the question is asking, do you have an LXP in your technology stack? Now, we at the back end of the report of the 9-grid report, one of the titles is that orange one there of a paragraph in that report, the rise of learning experience as a buying need, the demise of the LXP as a buying category. And this is something that we see as a trend, and we kind of predicted this at the beginning of the LXP story. And what we did in 2020 is did some research, and following that is why we started to publish the 9-grids with the circles and squares as suites and specialists. Everybody wants an LXP, they think, but it might be just a particular. We always have to ask the question then, what is it that is, what gap do you want it to fill? What is the solution? What is the problem you're trying to solve? And in fact, a couple of recent projects that we've done, they came, different from very, very different industry backgrounds. They came to us and asked for, we want to add an LXP. Can you help us choose one? And and we always do this, we dig deep into and have stakeholder conversations. I remember with Stefan, actually, they were very prepared and had a whole list of long list of recommendations requirements that they wanted. And so when you go into that detail and challenging those, what we do is challenge those details, or agree, or we then go looking. What we saw with these other two corporates that were looking for LXPs, one of them we went back to them and said, your current learning system is not fit for the future vision you have. It's that you need to change, not just adding an LXP on top of it. So that was one thing that we said, and it was a completely different thing for a different corporate, where we said, your learning system is good enough, it's just badly implemented. And I think that is as well something where people who are not satisfied with their system, it could be the way it's been implemented. So having a partnership with the vendor and going through that together is hugely important. So on this screen, again, we've got this at the top there, 50% actually don't think they need an LXP. And actually that has become true as well. That midsection on the 9 grid where I said it's busy, only one system can really be justified. And then therefore the LXP functionality needs to be part of the suite. And actually what we found was that those that came in as LXPs originally have become suites because they had to add the LMS functionality, backfill with the LMS functionality. That at the bottom end, just before we move on, the HCMs again. So an important thing just to point out about the HCMs, quite often there are things that are missing, and there may be a specialist need that you need to add in to the HCM. Sometimes as a learning department these days, you don't get a choice. You have to go with the HCM learning module. That's just the way that it goes. But what we will say, and what's significant really for the Mazda situation, is that HCMs do not do the external, what we call extended enterprise, but that's the customer and partner education, or the dealerships as they're seeing it. And so you will have to go to something else anyway for extended enterprise. But like they did, it could actually be the same system internally and externally. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Very quickly through these. You can't have a webinar these days without mentioning AI. And one of the things that, this is, and I won't go into the detail of this, but you can see the third one down on the list there is when, asking what AI-enabled tools and systems are you using, piloting, implementing, or considering? And LMSs and LXPs are third on the list. We are just starting at the same time as we're doing the 9 grid research. We're doing some more research on AI and looking at the maturity of each of the vendors. If you decide that the reason you're changing your learning system is to be able to add more functionality and you want that AI in there, just be careful at the minute, because there's a lot of change. Every single briefing I have, there is an AI element to it, but a lot of it's on the roadmap. And what we are asking in this research is to speak to the corporates who are using those tools now. And we will publish the report at the end of Q1 next year, but it's going to be an ongoing piece of research that will develop as this exciting time develops as well. So moving on just quickly, just to show what the priorities have changed this year. I had to put this one in because it's just, it's staggered us a little bit. Normally when we ask this question, your top priorities, compliance is the top. you can see the blue there on the left-hand side, compliance and regulatory. The blue was last year and the green is this year, and it is now below second to upskilling and reskilling. So that is what the priority is. Compliance is not going to go away. It is so important. You can't be less compliant as an organization than you have been in the years. Probably you need more rules and regulations. But so that's skills is there top of the list for the first time ever that we've been asking the question. Just wanted to point out, extended enterprise is right at the other end of the scale, quite small. I think the reason for that is that the majority of the people that are answering this are probably learning development people. And actually, as you know, Stefan isn't in the internal learning and development department. And so, yeah, they may not have answered this question. We see that extended enterprise, the learning for the customer and the partners, the external, not the internal employee, is a huge trend. It's so important, and it's going to get more important as time goes by. So I think this next one is probably, the next slide is the last. We're coming into land. So when are you going to change the platform, a learning platform? And if you look at halfway down there, a lot of the top ones are kind of just parts of, and they might be specialists or whatever, but even the LMS is nearly 50% are saying that they will be changing that the LMS within the next 2 to 3 years. And that probably means it's the next renewal point for the licenses, because it's usually a three-year renewal point. So if you are thinking, then you better get started fairly quickly. It takes a while to do that. So I think that's I've probably taken more than my time, but the next slide just gives you some places to go. The Knowledge Centre is new on our website, freely available to download any of the papers and the research that we have, and there you've got the list of all the 9 grids. So looking forward to hearing what Stefan has to say.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Fiona. What interesting insights, and thanks for linking the further research in here as well. Also to hear that within the next 12 months, roughly, what did it say, 30% for the skill management are looking to migrate. That's a fairly quick turnaround. So maybe we're gonna hear some best practices and lessons learned in a second. But before we move on that last point on the slide before, we were talking about different learner groups. So back to you, audience, which learner groups, if you're considering a migration, are you looking to include in your migration plan? Is it internal employees only? Is it external, or both? Or you don't know? That is the question. Okay. And let's have a look at the results. Okay. Oh, interesting. So for the majority of you, it is both learner groups. Then the next talk might be just for you. And Stefan, over to you.
Yeah, hello. My name is Stefan Mach, and I'm the project manager here at Mazda Europe for migrating to our new learning management system, not only for our dealer network, but as well for internal and external employees. Thanks a lot for having me. Yeah, I want to give you a quick overview of what we did. Indeed, the project consists of like 2 tracks. We have around 1,300 plus external, so about 1,500 internal learners. But as well, the largest part, and that's where this presentation is mainly about, we are the European headquarter, and we have 20 national sales companies, 5 independent distributors, and in total there are 1,650 dealers, authorized repairers, plus a few independent operators who need to have access to it. In total, our dealers, authorized repairers, employ more than 22,000 staff with different job profiles, functions like being a technician, sales advisor, service advisor, marketing, IT, managing directors, and they all have different training needs. Yeah, those they represent Mazda to the end customers, and we want them to be well trained, to be well aware of our products, so that they can well sell and serve them and our brand values. So that's the scope. We had a self-developed LMS that was outdated, too many iterations, too many changes. It was not easy to use. It wasn't intuitive. Adding stuff made it more and more complex. And even though it was one central system, it still, it wasn't set up properly because we finally had no really good pan-European overview. So why do we look for a new LMS? The main mission is to make it easy and ideally also a bit fun for the learner. It needs to support learning paths. And we wanted to be able to configure it on our own, that we can add tags which we can use in mailings, that we can use in hotel booking forms, for instance, on our own. It was very important that it can support our rather complex organization structure from the European headquarters, middle level with a national sales company, sometimes we grouped like Czech, Slovak, for instance, and then dealers beneath. Well, as you know, German is spoken in multiple countries, same like French or Dutch, Flemish. So it was important that we have a good reuse of our existing assets to avoid double setup so that we can do it efficiently. And we wanted to be able to have a kind of compatibility with our old coding or new coding for reporting. So the selection process, as Fiona previously mentioned, we created a big, long list of requirements, finally more than 150, and we involved Fiona and team, and they finally recommended several vendors to us we should look into that could be a good match to our requirements, including IMC. We had 2 rounds of selections, and finally we selected IMC as our partner. And the key criteria why we selected them it started with the team, because they really proved to really trying to understand what we want to achieve and our requirements. They provided a solution that can support our complex organization structure. They gave us tools so that we can configure it on our own, but also on the other hand, that they customize it together with us. For instance, the hotel booking process, that was fairly unique apparently for us. For us, it was normal, but luckily we still have it, and we even have now a more advanced version. We have a media library where we can easily reuse media assets if we have one German that can be shared across Mazda Germany, Mazda Austria, Mazda Switzerland, for instance. And especially the UI is easy to use. So the migration basically project is split into 4 or even a fifth path for the internal learners, but then for the dealer-facing one, it's first of all about how to set up the LMS and customizing our templates, even though sometimes it was a bit overwhelming with the possibilities. We wanted many possibilities, so that's what we wanted, what we asked for. API migration with the amount of 1,650 dealers and 22,000 dealer staff. Of course, nobody wants to maintain them, so that need to be integrated into our system landscape. Data migration was important, and also we needed the data back in our reporting system, in our corporate enterprise-wide data warehouse. The collaboration was really, really good with the team. They are very supportive, and since we started 2 years ago, we enjoy a really good team spirit. And especially the team is they know their product, they know the area very well, and they can share best practices from other industries. That was very beneficial for us. Proven opportunities that we have here. Well, of course, the first go live is exciting. How will it be? But especially our largest market was very concerned, but luckily only one called and finally reported it's intuitive to use. So that was really good to see. We have now the basis for our learning pathways that we want to launch all across Europe, from induction, basic, or bronze, silver, gold level, or basic, advanced, expert level. We have better transparency now, and we can also better check if mandatory trainings are done, like now launching our latest new model, so we can easily track if all the like technician or salesman joined the training. So we can say we've achieved our key targets, the minimal viable product is live, but we're not running out of ideas or plans for next year. There are a lot more features to come, especially the more advanced learning path. We want to start using tests, surveys, the integration with Adobe Connect or Microsoft Teams. There's a bit still on our roadmap to do. Lessons learned. What can I say about our key takeaways? I think it really turned out to be really useful to hear about these best practices. They helped us to make the one or other decision, and that was really good. IT integration, a bit of lesson learned, took a bit longer than expected. Starting early is helpful. And another lessons learned is, even though we were at the beginning not sure, should we really dive into the huge amount of meta text, but it definitely turned out to be useful because now we can do a lot of configuration on our own. So advisors, I was asked, can I give any advices for other organizations doing a similar transition? Yeah, take time at the beginning for sufficient to learn about the configuration that you can do yourself and using the best practices. So conclusion, we are pleased, we are happy, we have an easy, intuitive to use LMS. The dealers like it, they don't have any questions about it. This is really good. And this new learning management system offers far more features than we had before. And the good thing is also with the quarterly updates every year, we get new features that we can start introducing now. What is as well good, we can better reuse shared resources. And what is also nice, we like the transparency that we have a far better overview on a pan-European scale. So that we know the numbers, so that we can better track when launching new models or the standard trainings. So that is very helpful. And on the next slide, here you can just see a screenshot from the training catalog, for instance, how it looks like for a German dealer when he logs on. And as you can see, it looks a bit like a normal e-commerce shopping system. You see the filters on the left. You see the training offers that are in the catalog. Depends on how you filter it. For like top trainings is our new CX80, of course. And yeah, our dealers really appreciate it. I hope it was helpful, telling you a bit about our way, how we did the migration and launch. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Stefan. That was really interesting and quite the journey you went on there, but with the help of some experts, it seems like you made your way through just fine. And thanks also for that little sneak peek into your system. Thanks for bringing that with you today. So there were a few concerns that you had at the beginning. One of them was it being intuitive and really catering to the needs of the different regional requirements. So back to our lovely audience. Which aspect of LMS migration concerns you the most? So what's your number one concern? You may have many, perhaps all of them, but what's the one that maybe is the most mission critical for you? Okay, let's have a look at the results. Okay, so it's a match between complexity of new system setup, yes, that as we just heard, can be successfully managed with a clear plan, and stakeholder buy-in and support. So yeah, that change management aspect to how to communicate a bit what Stefan touched upon, how to communicate that change also internally and communicate the system. Our next guest is our very own Andreas, who is going to touch upon some of these aspects that may concern you from a more technical standpoint, when considering migrating and replacing your LMS. So, Andreas, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Annika, and welcome to all of our participants. I'm Andreas, and I'm responsible for the software development within IMC, taking care of our standard product development, new standard functionality, as well as customer-specific considerations and customizations, and customer-specific project-oriented technical tasks also involve migrations. So we do have a decent experience in doing migrations with our customers from different source systems into IMC's Learning Suite. And I want to run you through the top 3 things that you should take a look into when planning your migration. And I wanted to start with the first point, which is the need. So what's the need for you to migrate? And the first important thing is you might have gathered a lot of data, as we had seen Stefan showing. If you have an old system that gathered 15 years worth of data, you should first start asking yourself if you need all of that data really in the new system, right? There might be people saying, yes, we need to have all of that for reporting. We need to keep all of the old data. And you should also really take a look into the legal requirements, because like based on GDPR and a certain need for data, and also taking care that you don't gather too much data, you might not want to keep all of that. There are legal requirements that you might need to keep, like definitely 5 years or 10 years worth of data based on the legal restrictions on your industry. But do you really need to keep more than that? That's a fair question that you need to ask yourself. And also you need to see like how much reporting back into the past you really need for running your day-to-day learning processes. And that should define how much data really migrate into the new learning management system. That does not mean that you would basically need to drop all of that, but you could still archive it into a separate reporting solution. But what is the amount of data that you really need to move into the new system to run the daily operation of your learning processes? Also, when looking at your existing system, you might have imported data or put data into certain functionality that is available that you notice that you are not using over the years. So from our point of view, we always tell our customers we can import a lot of different user attributes, a lot of different description attributes for courses and learning paths and so on. But we really only want to have that data imported into the learning management system that you need for reporting and for running your learning processes. The rest can be put into a data warehouse or kept somewhere else. So you should restrict the data that you're putting into the LMS to be really the functional basis for your learning processes. And if those processes might change, then you might also be able to drop some part of that data when migrating to the new system. On the other hand, you should also consider the new functionality of the system that you're migrating to, and that might also be shaping the set of data that you will need to use in the future. So that's the basic part of the need that you're coming from, and that proceeds us to looking at the format. You might have the data in different format. If you host the system yourself, you might have full access to the database, which might be the most flexible and most powerful source, but most of the times it's also the most complex because it has a certain structure that is not known to the new provider of the system. So it would be possibly difficult for them to easily pull out of all of the data that you need. On the other hand, coming back to the need discussion, how much data do I need in a new system? And what part of it I possibly want to still save in a kind of reporting or archiving solution. And if you have an existing data warehouse or data lake, you might want to put all of the data from the old system into the data lake and use that as a source to move it to the new system, which would then basically be a kind of middleware in your migration process. And basically for really big systems that were also coming from multiple databases, we made very good experience with like consolidating that in a kind of data lake and then using that as the source of the migration to the new system. The format of that source is also pretty much making a huge difference in the migration process because, as I said, the proprietary database of the old system is the most flexible, but also the most complex, right? If you get a consolidation of that in a data lake or a format based on Excel sheets or CSV files, that will hugely help the migration process because the more you consolidate, the easier it is to transfer the data into the new system. And in most of the migration processes, we actually also use that consolidation in an Excel sheet or CSV file to also go into a mapping process. Because you might have data, descriptive data and values in your old system that we need to map to the new functionality in the target system. And having that on a sheet where you basically can go through in the migration process makes it much easier to direct the data to the target places in the new system. Yep. And finally, we want to take a look at the execution. So one thing that we often see is that customers requesting a set of objects to be migrated, right? And we would then basically look into doing an automated migration process for all of those objects. But what we also often see is that the numbers behind those objects are basically not verifying a automated process. So if you have like 100,000 or 1 million records of course registrations, course executions, that's for sure part of a migration process, no question. But if you have like 50 to 100 web-based trainings that need to go into the new system, and it does not make sense to run through an automation, a test run, a production run, then you rather go and upload them in the new system manually, right? So you need to keep a reasonable distinction how to target different objects that should be part of your migration approach. One very central point from our perspective is picking the right point in time. Because if you would want to migrate all in progress data, basically looking at a web-based training, and people went up to slide 3 of 15 and have like 30% progress, if you really want to migrate that, because unfortunately the data that web-based training store is not standardized on that progress level. So you would not want to migrate that because that's like a huge effort and has a decent complexity. So the best approach from our point of view and our experience is to pick a right point in time for the cutover, tell all users early enough that you're cutting over from the old system to the new one at a certain point in time, that they should finish their trainings until then and make them clearly aware of that what they don't have finished until that part, they might need to start over on a learning content level in the new system, right? Then that's transparent for everyone, and you have basically reduced the complexity a decent lot in your migration process. And yeah, possibly an obvious one, but if you have a cutover phase, even if it only takes like 2 to 3 days where the system might not be available, go and communicate it early so that everyone is aware of when that cutover takes place and when the system might not be available. We normally take a look at together with our customers that cutover period is as little as possible, and most of the times we get that done over a weekend's worth of time. But still, if everyone is aware that the system is not available for an even short amount of time, that's the best thing to have. Yeah. Taking a quick look into the summary, we said we want to consider what data we really need in the new system, strip off everything that was not used in the past and that does not have an expression in the old system based on functionality. Take a look at the format that you can provide and that you want to use to transfer the data to the new system, and check if you need to migrate everything automatically, and pick the right point in time for the execution of the migration. So
Thank you.
That's it for my part.
Thank you so much, Andreas. Some very clear steps that now we can take when we're looking at migrating. So that already brings us to the end of our talks. But before we wrap up, I would like to quickly revisit the key insights that we gained from all the three talks today. We've learned that as your organization evolves, your LMS will likely have to evolve with your vision, with your goals too. And ultimately, migrating and replacing an LMS is a technical upgrade, as we've just heard. And there are lots of moving parts that you need to consider, that if you have a clear roadmap and a clear understanding with the help of experts that you can consult, make happen. But it's also ultimately about being able to deliver relevant and effective training programs that really can move the needle. It's part of your organizational transformation. And as we've seen with Stefan's example, migration doesn't have to be overwhelming when you know what your goals are, when you've defined your requirements, and you've identified with the help of the experts such as Fiona and Andreas, what exactly it is you need, and map out that clear roadmap ahead. Upgrading your LMS isn't about just replacing what you have. It's also about ensuring that your new system is built to grow with you. And as we've seen, there is the need for that. Fiona shared some stats around that. It's about ensuring that your new system is adapting to your needs. And it's also looking at it a bit through a strategic lens. So focusing on selecting the right system that is tailored to your unique requirements and your approach, which will ultimately make the difference in the success long term of your learning system. So as we are at the end, I want to give a really big thanks to our incredible speakers, Stefan, Fiona, and Andreas. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable expertise and insights. And to you, audience, I hope you leave today with some new ideas and some insights on how you can do your own LMS migration. If you would like to explore the topic a bit further as well, the slide deck will be shared, so there will be the links that Fiona provided with you, but also you can visit our resource center where we have a comprehensive LMS upgrade guide. And of course, if you have any need for consultation or want to learn more about LMS, you can get in touch with us directly. And of course, we hope to see you again at our next event, which will be the Learning Leaders Conference in Orlando. We will be there in person on December 4th, holding a talk on how to empower change in organizations. Our CEO will host the talk there. But for now, I would like to thank you all for participating in the session. Thanks you for your time, and also from Mazda Forceway and on behalf of IMC, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. And I hope to hear from you all soon.